9 p.m. Most of the offices in this glass and steel skyscraper in downtown Atlanta went dark hours ago. But the soft blue glow from my 4K monitor is still bright, reflecting sharply against the glass wall of my office. My name is Nia Robinson, and I'm 31 years old, and this isn't my real job. Don't get me wrong. By day, I am a senior financial auditor for one of the top 4 accounting firms in the world. My entire career is built on hunting for discrepancies. I find the numbers that don't add up, the gaps in the ledgers, the ghosts of fraud that multi-billion-dollar corporations try to hide. I'm good at it. But tonight, at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, I'm not hunting corporate fraud. I am working my second job. The unpaid one, the thankless one, the one that keeps the entire illusion of my family afloat. My cursor hovers over the pay bill button. Cigna Health, $600. I click. Done. Health insurance for Charles and Denise Robinson, my father and mother, and hi. What month is this? I do the mental math. This is year 6. 72 consecutive months since my father took an early retirement with absolutely no financial plan. You can handle it, Nia, my mother had said on the phone that night, her voice trembling. You've always been the smart one. Smart, that's the word they use when they mean workhorse. I let out a long sigh, a sound so familiar it has become part of the silence in this room. I open another tab on my secure browser. Internal bank transfer, $1,200, payee Jordan Robinson. Memo November business support. I almost laugh. Business support. Jordan, my 34-year-old brother, the pride of the family, hasn't balanced a checkbook in his entire life. Jordan is an entrepreneur. At least that's what he calls himself on social media. He has pictures of himself next to rented sports cars, parties at clubs I know he can't afford, and a streetwear brand that I am fairly certain has sold exactly 3 t-shirts in the last year. I bought 2 of them. This $1 and $200 business support started as a temporary loan 3 years ago. Just 6 months, Nia, he promised, his voice slick with that fake confidence. Just to get things off the ground. 3 years later, his launch has never happened, but the requests for wire transfers have never stopped. $1,800. That's $1,800 in the span of 10 minutes tonight. $1,800 that my family believes I just have lying around. And that's the rub. In the parallel universe that is the Robinson family, I am a charity case. In their eyes, I am boring Nia. Safe Nia. 31, no husband, no kids. A dedicated office worker at some numbers job they've never bothered to understand. It's a shame you don't take risks like your brother, my father said just last Sunday at dinner, clapping Jordan proudly on the back. Jordan now, he's a go-getter. They pity me. They genuinely believe I am struggling. They think I live in a small apartment somewhere on the outskirts of the city, barely scraping by. A small apartment is how my mother describes it to my aunts. I've heard her on the phone. Oh, she's doing fine, she'll say, her voice dropping into that specific key of pity. She has her steady job, just a 1-bedroom though. Bless her heart. Bless my heart. I lean back. My Herman Miller Aeron chair gives a faint sigh as I swivel. I look around my home office. I am not in a cramped corporate cubicle. I am in my penthouse. I stand up, my bare feet cool against the wide plank white oak flooring, and walk to the floor-to-ceiling glass wall. Miles below me, the million lights of Atlanta glitter like a spilled galaxy. This isn't a small apartment. This is a 2,500-square-foot penthouse in Buckhead that I paid for in cash last year. My boring job, senior financial auditor at a Big 4 firm. My base salary is well into the 6 figures, and my end-of-year bonus is usually more than my father made in a year, even when he was working. They pity me for being single. I call it peace. They think I'm failing because I don't flash my money on social media. I call it privacy. The truth is, I could have comfortably retired both of my parents, if they knew. But they don't. And that's exactly how I've kept it. I am the invisible one. I am the silent ATM. I am the financial safety valve they don't even know is protecting them from disaster. Their ignorance has been my shield. They can't demand what they don't know I have. But this $1,800, it's not about the money. I make that before my first morning coffee. It's about the disrespect. It's about the assumption. They don't ask me. They expect me. They take from me without asking, and then turn around and pity the very life they are bleeding dry. They treat me like a shallow puddle, while drawing from me like an endless well. They praise Jordan, the star entrepreneur, who is burning my money like kindling while calling me the stable daughter, who is wasting her life. I walk back to my desk and close my laptop. The definitive click echoes in the quiet penthouse. The second job is done, at least for tonight. I walk back to the window looking down at the city I own a piece of. They know nothing about me. They don't know who I am, what I have, or what I am capable of. And with Thanksgiving just 2 weeks away, I have a very strong feeling that their ignorance is about to get very, very expensive for them. My brother Jordan is the sun. And in the Robinson family solar system, everyone else, especially me, is just a cold, distant planet expected to orbit him. Jordan is 34 years old, and to hear my parents tell it, he is the walking embodiment of entrepreneurial spirit. He is the pride of the family. He is the go-getter. He is the son who is really making something of himself. What is that something? I am still trying to figure that out. His Instagram is a masterclass in illusion. One day he's posting a blurry picture from a crowded nightclub captioned, "Networking with the city's biggest players." The next he's posing against the grille of a gleaming black sedan, which I know for a fact he does not own, with the caption, "Big moves, stay hungry." He is always on the grind, always closing a deal, always about to hit it big. My parents eat it up. They brag about him to their friends, their voices swelling with a pride that I have never once heard directed at me. "Oh, Jordan," my mother will say, her hand fluttering to her chest. "He's just so ambitious. He reminds me so much of his father." What they conveniently forget, or perhaps willfully ignore, is who finances this ambition. Who co-signed on the lease for his startup office, which is really just an overpriced shared workspace downtown. Who co-signed for the luxury sedan he currently drives after his credit was rejected not once, but 3 times. That would be me. Dependable Nia. Nia with the good credit score. My good credit score wasn't magic. It was built on 15 years of relentless financial discipline. It was built on saying no to vacations I wanted, paying off my student loans in 2 years instead of 10, and never once carrying a balance on my credit card. My financial stability is a fortress I built brick by methodical brick. To Jordan and my parents, it's just a community well they can draw from whenever they feel thirsty. I had just walked out of my glass-walled shower, the steam clinging to the mirrors in my master bathroom, when my phone buzzed on the marble countertop. I glanced at a text message. Not from Jordan. Worse. It was from his wife, Monique. I dried my hands and tapped the screen. The message popped up, and even through the glowing pixels, the entitlement was so thick it was suffocating. "Hey, Nia, hope work is good. Quick question. Me and Jordan are at the dealership right now looking at a new Escalade. It is gorgeous. Anyway, the financing guy is being a little tricky. We just need you to co-sign. It's just a formality, you know. Your credit is just cleaner than ours. LOL. It's no big deal for you, right? I mean, what else are you spending your money on? Haha. Just text me back so I can give him your info. See you at Thanksgiving, kisses." I read it once, then I read it again. What else are you spending your money on? The coldness started in my chest and spread outwards, a familiar, icy rage that prickled under my skin. It wasn't just the ask. It was the assumption behind it. The casual, smiling dismissal of my entire life. In her mind, and by extension, in all of their minds, my life was just an empty space, a void filled with a boring job, and a small apartment. My income wasn't for me. It wasn't for my goals, my security, or my future. It was a surplus resource for them. It was a safety net for Jordan's bad decisions. My entire financial identity was just a tool to facilitate his flashy lifestyle. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a husband. I didn't post pictures from nightclubs. Therefore, I had no needs, no desires, no value except as a signature on a loan document. I looked at the ha-ha, the casual laugh as if she had just asked to borrow a cup of sugar, not to put my financial future on the line for a $60,000 luxury truck. They weren't just ungrateful, they were actively predatory. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have typed out 1,000 responses. I could have sent screenshots of my penthouse mortgage statement. I could have sent a PDF of the last 3 delinquent payment warnings for the other car I already co-signed for. Instead, I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. The screen went black. The message and Monique and my entire leeching family vanished into the silence. The anger didn't vanish. It settled. It hardened into something new, something cold and sharp. Thanksgiving was coming. And for the first time in my life, I found myself actually looking forward to it. A few days later, my phone rang. I was at my desk deep in an audit trail and the sound made me jump. I glanced at the screen. Mom? I let it ring once, twice. I knew exactly why she was calling. It was the annual summons. I took a deep breath and swiped to answer. Hi, Mom. Nia, finally. You never pick up, she said, her voice a familiar mix of cheer and accusation. Listen, I'm calling about Thanksgiving. Dinner is at 7, and I need you to be on time. Please do not be late. I gripped the pen on my desk. Mom, I am never late. I'm an auditor. Punctuality is my job. I know, she said, completely dismissing my point. But this year is special. You cannot be late. Your brother Jordan and Monique have a huge announcement. I could hear the capital letters in her voice, the sheer bubbling excitement she reserved exclusively for him. A huge announcement, I asked, my voice monotone. I thought of the text from Monique, the Escalade. They were probably going to announce their new truck, the one they expected me to pay for. Yes, it is so wonderful. I can't say, but it's big, really big. The whole family is coming. Your Aunt Clarice, your cousins from Macon. Everyone wants to be there for Jordan. For Jordan, never for me. Okay, Mom, I'll be there, I said. Good. And Nia, wear something nice, not, your usual work clothes. Make an effort. The line clicked dead. She didn't even say goodbye. The familiar heavy cloak of obligation settled over me. I hated these command performances. I knew my role. I was the set dressing. The quiet, disappointing daughter required to sit in the audience and applaud the achievements, real or imagined, of the golden child. I knew I would go. Duty demanded it. But as I stared at the dead phone screen, I felt the ice that had formed after Monique's text. This year, something felt different. This year, the dutiful daughter was tired. Thanksgiving morning. I was in my kitchen, standing by the window, nursing my first cup of coffee. The sun was just starting to burn through the thin morning haze over the city. For a few minutes, it was quiet. I had purposefully kept my morning clear. I knew the rest of the day would be a performance, a long, draining play where I had to pretend I wasn't the one paying for the stage, the costumes, and all the actors. My phone vibrated on the granite countertop. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But my auditor's brain, the part of me that hates loose ends, forced me to pick it up. Is this Ms. Nia Robinson? A professional, slightly stressed voice asked. This is she, I replied, taking a sip of coffee. Ms. Robinson, thank goodness. This is Mark from Affluent Affairs Catering. We are handling the Robinson family Thanksgiving today. We have a problem. I felt my shoulders tense. A problem. Yes, ma'am. We've tried to run the card on file for the deposit balance. A visa in the name of Denise Robinson. It's been declined. Repeatedly. Exceeds limit. The total outstanding balance is $10,600. We can't dispatch the trucks or the staff until this is settled. $10,600. I almost choked on my coffee, not at the amount but at the sheer audacity. My mother hosting 30 people. My mother didn't have $10,000. She didn't have 10,000 cents of available credit. I knew with the cold, immediate certainty of an auditor finding a forged signature exactly what had happened. Jordan. My mother, in her naive pride, must have given Jordan access to her card for business expenses. And Jordan, being Jordan, had likely spent the last month treating his clients to expensive dinners, buying new inventory for his non-existent brand, and generally living his Instagram fantasy. All on my mother's credit. And now the bill for the single most important family event of the year, the event meant to showcase his success, had bounced. "Ma'am, are you still there?" Mark asked, his patience clearly thinning. I sighed. The sound was lost in the cavernous silence of my kitchen. I walked over to my purse, pulled out my wallet, and retrieved the heavy metallic American Express Platinum card. "I'm here, Mark," I said, my voice perfectly level. "You can put the full amount on my card. I am sending you the details right now." I read out the 16 digits, the expiration date, and the security code. There was a pause, a few clicks of a keyboard. Then a relieved sigh from his end. "Got it. The payment went through. We are all set, Ms. Robinson. The trucks are on their way." "Thank you, Mark," I said and hung up. I stood there for a full minute, the cold card still in my hand. $10,000 gone before I had even gotten dressed. I wasn't just paying for their health insurance and their business loans. I was paying for the very food they would eat while they pitied me. I placed the card back in my wallet. The rage was gone. It was replaced by something much colder. A calculation. A ledger in my mind was finally being balanced. Today, for the first time, I wasn't just going to dinner. I was going to conduct an audit. I pulled up to the curb of the house I grew up in. Even from the street, I could hear the roar of conversation and laughter. The house was packed. Every cousin, aunt and uncle within a 100-mile radius was here. This was the event of the season, and my father was holding court. I took a deep breath, smoothing down the front of my silk blouse, and stepped inside. The wave of noise, perfume, and heat hit me immediately. And under it all, the smell of roasted turkey, savory sage stuffing, and rich cranberry sauce. My $10,000 perfume. I saw them instantly. Jordan and Monique. They were standing by the fireplace, the center of a laughing circle of relatives. Jordan was waving his hands animatedly as he told some grand story, and Monique was leaning against him, practically glowing. She was wearing a new glittering tennis bracelet that caught the light with every move. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Was that where the catering deposit had really gone? My mother, Denise, rushed past me in a blur of nervous energy. "Nia, you're here. Good. Put your coat away. Dinner's almost ready." She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I was. She was a frantic hummingbird buzzing with excitement for the main event. For Jordan, I was just another guest. No, that wasn't right. I was the sponsor. I found a quiet corner by the dining room watching the spectacle. Everyone was fawning over them. When my mother finally called everyone to the table, it was a chaotic rush for seats. The table was magnificent, I had to admit. The catering company had earned their money. It was overflowing with food, far too much for 30 people. I found a seat at the far end, sandwiched between my Aunt Clarice, who smelled strongly of mothballs, and a younger cousin I barely knew. The conversation, of course, was all Jordan. "Jordan, tell Aunt Clarice about your new business venture." "Monique, honey, that bracelet is just divine. Jordan is treating you right." Jordan soaked it all in, leaning back in his chair like a king accepting tribute. My father Charles sat at the head of the table. His face was flushed with pride, his eyes rarely leaving his son. He looked happier than I had seen him in years. He looked at Jordan and Monique, and the adoration was so thick it was almost sickening. He was a man who felt he had finally truly succeeded all through his son. I ate my food silently. The turkey was dry. Or maybe I just couldn't taste it. Every bite I took, I mentally calculated the cost. That bite of potatoes, $20. That sip of wine, $50. Finally, after the main course plates were cleared, my father stood up. He tapped his crystal wine glass with a silver fork. The loud chatter slowly died down to a murmur, then to absolute silence. If I could have everyone's attention, Charles boomed, his voice full of celebration. Welcome, welcome family. It does my heart so good to see everyone here under this roof together. He smiled a wide, magnanimous grin. We have so much to be thankful for, our health, our family, and our successes. His eyes immediately found Jordan. But tonight I want to make a very special toast. A toast to my son Jordan. He raised his glass high. Jordan preened, pulling Monique closer. This man, my father continued, is the definition of ambition. He is a go-getter. He sees what he wants, and he takes it. He has built an incredible business from the ground up, and he provides so beautifully for his wonderful family. Monique beamed. My father paused, letting the warm, appreciative murmurs fill the room. And then he turned. His eyes locked onto mine halfway down the table. The smile on his face changed. It became something tighter, something tinged with pity and disappointment. The whole room followed his gaze. Suddenly I was no longer invisible. I was on stage. Nia, he said, his voice still loud enough for everyone to hear. You are 31 years old now. The silence was absolute. You could hear the house settling. I hope you are watching your brother tonight, Nia. I truly hope you are taking notes. He paused, letting the words sink in. Look at him. He has a beautiful, devoted wife. He has a business that is absolutely booming. He is building a legacy for the Robinson name. He gestured back to Jordan, then his eyes snapped back to me. And then, there's you. He let the words hang in the air, heavy and sharp. Still in that same small apartment you've had for years. No husband, no kids, just your job. It was a dismissal of my entire life delivered like a eulogy. He leaned forward slightly as if sharing a secret with the whole room. Tell me, honey. Be honest. Aren't you just a little bit jealous? It was not a question. It was an execution. The silence that followed was not quiet. It was loud. It was heavy, suffocating. I could feel the eyes of 30 people boring into me. Aunt Clarice shifted uncomfortably beside me. Across the table, one of my cousins looked down at her plate, horrified on my behalf. But the worst part, the pity. I could see it in my mother's eyes as she watched me, wringing her hands, willing me not to make a scene. And I saw the look on Jordan's face. He was smirking. A small, victorious twitch at the corner of his mouth. He was bathing in this. This was his coronation, paid for by my humiliation. My blood ran cold. The $10,600 receipt in my purse felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. The $600 I paid for his health insurance. The $1,200 I sent his brother. All of it swirled in my head. I felt 1,000 responses rise up in my throat. I could have screamed. I could have thrown that receipt onto the table. I could have told my father exactly what his booming business was built on, but I didn't. Years of being the good daughter, the quiet one, took over. I lifted my chin. I forced a smile onto my face, a smile so tight it hurt my cheeks. I looked directly at my father, the man who had just publicly disemboweled me. I'm fine, Dad, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm just happy everyone is together. My father, Charles, seemed satisfied with my surrender. The public humiliation was complete. He had proven his point to the family. He turned away from me, his smile returning booming and bright. He was back in his element, the proud patriarch. Wonderful, wonderful, he said, as if I had just given the most agreeable answer in the world. The suffocating tension in the room didn't disappear, but it shifted. People started breathing again. Aunt Clarice took a large, noisy sip of her wine. But, Charles said, his voice dropping just a little for dramatic effect, that wasn't the main reason I wanted to raise a glass. He beamed at Jordan, who was practically vibrating with self-importance, his chest puffed out. That wasn't the big announcement my wife promised you all. My father reached into the breast pocket of his suit jacket. He pulled out a piece of paper. It was a cashier's check. He held it up for everyone to see, waving it gently in the air. As I was saying, my son is a provider. He takes care of his family. And tonight, Jordan and Monique have just given us the most incredible, the most generous gift. He unfolded the check with a flourish. $20,000. A collective gasp filled the dining room. One of my younger cousins, literally whistled. Aunt Clarice dropped her fork, and it clattered loudly against her plate. 20,000, she whispered, her eyes wide as saucers. My mother Denise burst into actual tears of joy. She didn't even try to hide it. She dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, looking at Jordan, as if he were a visiting god who had just performed a miracle. Oh, Jordan! Oh, honey! The room exploded into a cacophony of applause and overlapping congratulations. That's my boy! Incredible, Jordan! Monique, honey, you picked a winner. It was deafening. This was his triumph. This was the tangible proof everyone needed that his ambition was real, that his big moves were finally paying off. This was the moment that validated every bit of favoritism my parents had ever shown him. I did not applaud. I just sat there, my hands frozen in my lap. The forced, painful smile had not left my face, but behind my eyes the gears were turning. My gears, the auditor's gears, the ones that don't get swept up in emotion, the ones that just analyze, collate data, and find the truth. Fact 1. $20,000. Fact 2. Jordan's business was a financial black hole that I personally funded to the tune of $1,200 every single month. His wife Monique had just tried to get me to co-sign for an Escalade because their credit was, in her words, tricky. People who need co-signers for a luxury truck do not gift $20,000. Fact 3. My father had explicitly stated the money was to renovate the house. Fact 4. The most important fact, the one that pierced through all the noise. I knew for an absolute certainty that this house was paid off. My parents had held a mortgage-burning party 5 years ago. I was there. I brought a bottle of expensive champagne. It was their single biggest milestone. The house was their only significant asset. It was free and clear. The numbers didn't add up. The story was wrong. My blood, which had been simmering with humiliation, turned to absolute ice. I suddenly understood everything. It wasn't a gift. I knew exactly what it was. It was a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. It was the easiest, fastest, and most predatory way to pull cash out of a paid-off asset. Jordan hadn't given them $20,000. He had taken it. He had taken the single most valuable thing my parents owned, the roof over their heads, their only security, their entire life's work, and he had slapped a lien against it. He had convinced them in their pride and their profound financial ignorance to sign loan documents. He wasn't renovating the house. He was liquidating it. My God, it was brilliant in its own sociopathic way. He made them thank him for stealing from them. He made them throw a party in his honor, a celebration of their own financial ruin. He used their blind pride in him as the weapon to disarm them. And the $10,600 catering bill? It all clicked into place. He knew he had a $20,000 line of credit coming through. He had probably spent my mother's credit card to the absolute max buying that bracelet for Monique, funding his lifestyle, knowing this new gift would cover all his tracks. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I, as always, was Peter. He wasn't just a failure. He wasn't just a leech. He was a predator. And these were his parents. Amid the roar of applause and my mother's happy sobs, Jordan looked up. His eyes scanned the table, drinking in the adoration from our aunts, our cousins, and his weeping mother. And then his eyes found mine. He was still sitting next to Monique, who was now busily showing off her new bracelet to our Aunt Clarice. He locked eyes with me from across the room, and he smirked. It was not a friendly smile, it was not a "can you believe it" look of shared triumph. It was a look of pure, unadulterated victory. It was the exact same smirk he'd had on his face when my father had humiliated me just moments before. This was his checkmate. My father had asked me if I was jealous. Jordan's look was the answer. It said, "You see." It said, "This is what real success looks like. Not your boring spreadsheets, not your safe little job." It said, "I am the son who gives $20,000 gifts. You are the daughter who gets pitied at the table." He thought he had won. He thought he had proven once and for all that he was the valuable one, and I was nothing. I just stared back at him. The auditor in me was quiet now. The daughter was gone. Something else, something much colder and more precise was taking over. He had no idea what he had just done. He had no idea the kind of mind he had just insulted. He saw a boring auditor. He didn't see the woman who hunted financial criminals for a living. I picked up my wine glass. I raised it just slightly in his direction. A silent acknowledgement. Game on, Jordan. The applause was still echoing when I broke the silence. My voice wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was just clear. The voice I used in boardrooms when I had found an irregularity. "Dad," I said. The noise stopped, not gradually. It stopped all at once as if a switch had been thrown. Every head in the room which had been turned toward Jordan now snapped to me. My father, who was still standing, his glass held high, blinked. "What is it, Nia? I was making a toast." "I know," I said, my eyes perfectly level with his. "I was just curious. About the gift." Jordan, who had been leaning back in his chair like a king on a throne, suddenly sat bolt upright. His smirk was gone, replaced by a flash of pure panic. "What about it?" My father asked, his tone still celebratory, but now laced with impatience. "That's a very generous amount," I said calmly. $20,000. I was just wondering about the logistics. For tax purposes, you know." I looked past him directly at Jordan. "Was it a wire transfer? Or just a personal check?" Jordan's face flushed a deep, angry red. "What kind of question is that?" he snapped. "Nia, what are you doing?" my mother whispered frantically from her end of the table, her eyes wide with horror. She wasn't horrified by Jordan. She was horrified by me. By the fact I was interrupting the coronation. I ignored them both. I kept my gaze on my father. "I'm a numbers person, Dad. That's my job, remember? The one you find so boring?" I leaned forward just slightly. "I'm just wondering, did you and Mom have to sign any paperwork for this gift?" There it was, the question, the audit. "Paperwork?" My father repeated, his brow furrowing in genuine confusion. "You know," I continued, "at a bank. Did Jordan take you to a bank? Did you have to sign for a loan?" The word loan hung in the air like a poisonous gas. The relatives started murmuring. Aunt Clarice looked back and forth between me and Jordan, her eyes wide. Jordan shot out of his chair. It scraped back so violently it nearly toppled over. "What did you say to me?" he shouted, pointing a finger at me across the table. You're accusing me of lying." "I'm just asking a question," I said, my voice still infuriatingly calm. "You're jealous," he roared. "That's all it is. You can't stand it. You can't stand to see me finally succeed. You can't stand that I'm the one giving them $20,000 while you just sit there in your tiny, sad apartment." My mother started to cry again, but this time they were not tears of joy. "Nia, please, stop this. You're ruining everything. You're ruining Thanksgiving." "She is jealous, Dad," Jordan yelled, turning to my father for backup. "She has been jealous of me her entire life. She's a bitter, lonely woman, and she wants to tear me down because she has nothing." And that was all my father needed to hear. It was the confirmation of his entire worldview, the narrative he had clung to for 30 years. Jordan was the victim. I was the attacker. My father's face, which had been flushed with pride, turned a deep mottled purple. His knuckles were white as he gripped the back of his chair. When he spoke, his voice was not a shout. It was a low, guttural roar that shook with a rage I had not seen since I was a child. "You," he growled, pointing that same finger at me. "I have had enough of you." He took a step away from the table, as if he needed space to unleash his fury. "For 30 years I have watched you, sitting in the corner, judging, always judging. Your brother has heart, he has ambition, he takes risks, he fails, he gets back up, he is a man." He paced a step, his eyes burning into me. "And you, what do? You sit behind a desk, you punch numbers, you collect your safe little paycheck, and you live your safe little life all alone with nothing to show for it but your own smug sense of superiority." "Dad?" I started, but he cut me off. "Do not interrupt me," he bellowed, and this time it was a shout that made the glasses rattle. "Your brother stands here tonight a success, a man who gives back to his parents, a man who understands what family means. He just handed me a check for $20,000 to make this house beautiful, to give your mother the kitchen she's always dreamed of." He jabbed his finger toward Jordan, then back to me. "He provides, he contributes. What do you do, Nia? What have you ever done for this family? Nothing. You just take up space. You come to these dinners, you eat our food, and you sit there with that sour look on your face, poisoning the room with your jealousy." He was practically hyperventilating, his chest heaving. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. "I am sick of it," he spat. "I am sick of your attitude. I am sick of your bitterness. And I am sick of you." He took a final deep breath. He looked at me with a coldness, a finality that went deeper than his anger. "You heard what Jordan said. You are a bitter, jealous woman. You are not welcome here. Get out of my house." The words hit me. I didn't flinch. I just absorbed them. "Dad," I whispered, "I mean it." He said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Take your jealousy and your sad little life and get out. You are not my daughter anymore." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a life breaking. The sound of 30 years of duty, of obligation, of silent financial support turning to ash. I looked at my mother. She was staring at her plate, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She was crying silently. She did not look at me. She did not defend me. I looked at Jordan. The red flush of anger was gone. His face was pale, but his eyes were triumphant. He had won. He had finally permanently cut me out. I slowly, deliberately picked up my napkin from my lap. I placed it on the table next to my uneaten slice of pie. I pushed my chair back, the legs making a quiet scraping sound on the hardwood floor. I stood up. I looked at my father, the man who had just erased me from his life. And for the first of what I knew would be many times, I did not say a word. I just turned and walked away. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The 30 years of trying to earn his love had just been severed cleanly like a surgeon's cut. The pain I expected to feel was replaced by a strange, cold clarity. I was no longer their daughter. I was just an auditor. And an audit was now due. I slowly, deliberately pushed my chair back. The quiet sound of the wood on the floor was the only sound in the room. I stood up. My father Charles was still breathing heavily, his face purple with rage. He looked at me triumphant, waiting for me to break down to beg to apologize. I simply reached into the leather purse hanging on the back of my chair. My movements were unhurried. The entire room of 30 people watched me as if I were a bomb they weren't sure was live. I unzipped the small inner pocket. My fingers found the folded piece of paper I had placed there that morning. I pulled it out. The long white receipt. I walked the few steps to the head of the table. I stood between my father and my mother. My mother, Denise, was still staring at her plate, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I didn't hand the paper to anyone. I simply unfolded it and placed it face up on the table directly in front of my father's plate, next to the useless $20,000 check he was so proud of. He recoiled slightly as if I had thrown something unclean on the table. What is that? He spat, his anger momentarily eclipsed by confusion. You're right, Dad, I said. My voice was calm. It was my boardroom voice, the voice of absolute cold authority. I'm not your daughter, I accept that, and I will leave your house. I paused, letting the finality of that sink in. But before I go, I looked at my mother. Mom. Her head shot up, her eyes wide and red, startled that I was speaking to her. You might recognize this, I said, tapping the paper. It's the receipt from Affluent Affairs Catering, the bill for this entire lovely evening. I saw the flash of recognition, followed by pure, unadulterated panic cross her face. Nia, how? They called me this morning, Mom. I said loud enough for the whole table to hear. At 9 a.m., they said the card on file, your card was declined, repeatedly. Exceeds limit. They were going to cancel the entire event. A new wave of gasps rippled through the room. Declined? Aunt Clarice whispered, her hand flying to her pearls. My father's head snapped toward my mother. Denise, what is she talking about? Declined. My mother looked like she was about to faint. She looked at Jordan, her eyes pleading. The total bill was $10,600. I continued, my voice cutting through the rising murmur. So I paid it. I put the entire cost of this celebration on my personal Amex. So you see, Dad, I said, turning back to him, you were wrong. I did contribute. I bought the food you're eating. I paid for the chairs you're sitting on. I paid for the staff that is currently washing your dishes. My father was speechless. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The rage was gone, replaced by a deep, profound, and public humiliation. He looked at Jordan, his eyes asking, why now? I turned my full attention to my brother, the guest of honor, the king. He was frozen, his face a ghostly white. Jordan, I said. My voice was soft now, almost conversational, which made it all the more terrifying. He flinched. My father is right about one thing, I said. You are the real family. You're the provider. You're the man who builds a legacy. And you just gave this family a $20,000 gift. I tapped the receipt one more time. The sound was like a gavel. So since you are the man of the house, why don't you pay me back? The room went dead silent again. Pay me back, Jordan. I repeated, my voice hardening. It should be easy for you. It's only $10,600. You've got $20,000 right there. Surely you can spare it. Pay me back for the party you ate, the party you used to celebrate yourself. He was trapped. Everyone was watching him. His entire image, his entire success was balanced on this single moment. He stammered, looking wildly between me and our father. It's tied up. It's for the renovation. It's not. I don't carry that kind of cash. Oh, that's a shame, I said, feigning disappointment. How about a check or Zelle? I have my phone right here. I'm happy to wait. He just stood there, completely, utterly exposed. He was a fraud. He had no money. The $20,000 gift was a lie, and the $10,000 catering bill was the proof. I had my answer. The audit was complete. That's what I thought, I said quietly. I picked up my purse. I looked at my father one last time. His face was gray. He looked like a man who had just had the entire foundation of his world ripped out from under him. Enjoy your dinner, I said. You can keep the receipt. Consider it a parting gift. I turned my back on all of them. On Jordan's white-hot silent rage, on my mother's devastated sobs, and on the 30 shocked faces of the family that was no longer mine. I walked steadily through the dining room. I didn't rush. I walked down the hall, my heels clicking on the floor. I opened the front door, and I stepped out into the cold, clean November night. I did not look back. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound of a lock finally engaging. The drive back to Buckhead was silent. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove through the empty streets of Atlanta, the city lights blurring past my windows. The contrast was stark. I had left a house overflowing with noise, fake laughter, and toxic screaming rage. I was returning to a place of absolute peace. I parked my car in its designated spot in the secure underground garage, took the private elevator straight up, and stepped into my penthouse. The moment the door closed behind me, sealing out the rest of the world, I took my first deep, clean breath of the night. The space was dark, lit only by the vast glittering skyline, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't turn on the lights. I dropped my keys and my purse on the marble island in the kitchen, the one that was bigger than the dining table I grew up with. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't pour a stiff drink. The auditor in me, the part of my brain that had been activated by Jordan's fraud, was still in control. The audit was not yet complete. I had identified the liabilities. Now it was time to cut them. I walked to my home office, the room my parents thought was a small bedroom in a tiny apartment. I sat in my chair, the same one I had sat in just 2 weeks ago while paying their bills. I opened my laptop. The screen illuminated my face in the dark. It was time for my real second job. The digital secession, I thought to myself. I logged into my primary bank account. The interface was clean, familiar, professional. I went to the bill pay center. First, Cigna Health, payee Charles and Denise Robinson. Amount $600, frequency monthly. I clicked on the payment. The option was simple: edit or delete. I moved the cursor over delete. A box popped up. Are you sure you want to delete this recurring payment? I thought of my father's face purple with rage. I thought of his voice booming, "You are not my daughter anymore." Yes, I whispered to the screen. I clicked. The payment vanished. Click. Second. Lexus Financial Services. Payee Denise Robinson. The $700 monthly payment for the luxury sedan she loved to drive to her neighborhood association meetings, the one she used to look down on her friends. I clicked delete payee. Another confirmation box. Are you sure? I thought of my mother sitting at that table weeping silently into her plate, refusing to look at me, refusing to say a single word in my defense as her husband publicly disowned me. Click. Gone. Third. The monthly transfer. My Hotro Kinduan to the pride of the family. I navigated to the recurring transfers. Payee Jordan Robinson. Amount $1,200. I clicked Cancel Series. Are you sure? I thought of his smirk. That victorious, smug look he gave me across the table. The look of a man who thought he had won, who thought he had finally gotten rid of the one person who saw him for the fraud he was. Click. Gone. Finally, the American Express portal. I logged in and went to Manage Account. I found the section for Authorized Users. There she was, Denise Robinson. Her card linked to my account. The one that had been declined, forcing my hand, starting this entire avalanche. I didn't report it lost. I didn't freeze it. I clicked the button that said simply, Remove. This action is permanent and will immediately deactivate this card. Click. I closed the laptop. The screen went dark, plunging the room back into silence. I had just undone a decade of financial entanglement in less than 5 minutes. I stood up and walked back to the window. I looked down at the glittering city, the weight of their insurance, their car, their business, their expectations. It was all gone. I hadn't just saved myself $1,800. No, it was $2,500 a month counting the car, $30,000 a year. But it wasn't about the money, it was about the release. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel orphaned, angry, or heartbroken. Instead, I felt light. A profound, unbelievable lightness. It felt as if I had been carrying a 100-pound backpack for 31 years and had just finally unclipped the straps and let it fall to the ground. I was no longer the secret provider. I was no longer the disappointing daughter. I was no longer their ATM. "You are not my daughter anymore," my father had said. I looked out at the skyline, my skyline, and I smiled. "Okay," I said to the glass. "I can live with that." For the first time in my entire life, I was completely, truly, and gloriously free. I woke up on Black Friday, not to the sound of a jarring alarm, but to the soft golden light of the Atlanta sun streaming into my bedroom. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel that familiar heavy dread about the holidays. I didn't feel obligated or angry or invisible. I felt light. I felt free. I made myself a perfect espresso in my kitchen, the high-end machine, a quiet hum in the silence of my penthouse. I walked over to the floor, to ceiling windows, looking down at the city. It was just after 10 a.m. The city was already buzzing. It was the biggest shopping day of the year. I knew with absolute certainty exactly where my mother was. She would be at Lenox Square Mall. She would be energized by Jordan's generosity, fueled by the public humiliation of her failed daughter, and ready to reward herself. I was just about to settle into my sofa with a book I had been meaning to read for months, when my phone resting on the granite countertop lit up. The caller ID was Mom. I smiled, a small, cold smile, right on schedule. I let it ring. Once, twice. I let it go to voicemail. A second later it rang again. Immediate, frantic. A third time. On the fourth immediate, insistent ring, I knew she had reached the peak of her panic. I calmly picked up the phone and pressed the speaker button. Before I could even say hello, her voice exploded from the phone. It was not a greeting. It was a high-pitched shriek, thin and brittle with pure, unadulterated hysteria. Nia, what did you do?" I could hear the background noise clearly. The faint, tinny sound of Christmas music, the murmur of a large holiday crowd, the beeping of cash registers. She was in public. She was making a scene. "Mom?" I asked, my voice deliberately, calm, neutral, almost bored. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "My card!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "My card. The American Express. I am at Neiman Marcus. I'm at the register. I was buying a purse, and it was declined." I pictured the scene perfectly. My mother puffed up with self-importance handing over the exclusive card, the polite cashier, the quiet, firm denial. It was declined, Nia right in front of everyone. She was half sobbing now, her voice thick with a humiliation I knew she cared about more than anything else. "Everyone is staring at me. This is the worst moment of my life. This is so embarrassing. You have to fix this. Call the bank. Call them right now. Tell them it's a mistake." "I can't do that, Mom," I said, simply taking a sip of my espresso. "What do you mean you can't do that?" she screamed. "It's an emergency. Call them. There is no mistake, Mom." I said, my voice as level as the skyline in front of me. It wasn't declined by accident. It was declined because I canceled the card. The line went completely, utterly silent. The background noise of the mall seemed to vanish. I could hear nothing but her sharp, shocked intake of breath. You... What?" she stammered. The hysteria was gone, replaced by a cold, stunned disbelief. "I canceled the card," I repeated slowly, as if explaining it to a child. "Last night. Right after Dad told me I was no longer his daughter." But that's my card," she insisted, her voice rising again, though it was weaker this time. "I am an authorized user. You can't just do that." "Actually, I can," I said, the auditor in me taking over. "It was never your card, Mom. It was my card, my account, my name, my credit history. You were just a user. I am no longer authorizing you to spend my money." But My shopping, she whispered. It was a pathetic sound. She couldn't comprehend a world where her access was cut off. My status. That's not my problem anymore, I said. That's when the anger returned, the last defense of a narcissist. You are a horrible, hateful child, she shrieked, her voice echoing tinny and small. To do this to your own mother on Black Friday after everything we have done for you. Everything you've done for me. I almost laughed. Let's be very clear, Mom. Dad made the terms of our relationship perfectly clear last night. I am not your daughter, remember? She started to stammer, to backtrack. He didn't mean... It was the heat of the moment. You provoked him. You know how he gets. I cut her off. The time for excuses was over. The time for enabling was over. I'm just following his instructions, I said, my voice cold and final. I am no longer part of the family, and that means I am no longer the family's bank. I looked out at the peaceful morning. I have to go, Mom. Nia, wait! Don't you dare hang up on... I pressed the red end call button, cutting off the sound of her sputtering, indignant rage. I placed the phone back on the counter face down. The silence of my penthouse rushed back in, and it was the sweetest, most expensive sound I had ever heard. I had spent the afternoon in a state of productive peace. I reorganized my entire home office, cleared out old files, and even started reading that book. The sun was beginning to dip low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My penthouse was quiet, a sanctuary. Of course it couldn't last. My phone rang again. Mom, I sighed, placed my book down and picked up the phone. I didn't even bother with the speaker this time. I just held it to my ear. The sound that hit me was not the shrill anger from the mall. It was a raw, guttural wail, a sound of pure animalistic panic and despair. Nia, oh my God, Nia, they're here. They're taking it. They're taking my car. She was sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating, her words barely coherent. I could hear a man's deep, authoritative voice in the background and the unmistakable hydraulic groan of a tow truck. Mom, slow down. Who is taking what? I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. The tow truck, she shrieked, her voice cracking. They are hooking up my car, my Lexus. They are taking my Lexus right out of the driveway. Nia, the neighbors. Everyone is outside. Mrs. Davidson from next door is watching me. Oh God, this is the end. Do something. Call them, pay them. I pictured it perfectly. The quiet suburban street. The flashing yellow lights of the repo truck. And my mother standing on her lawn in utter hysterics, her entire neighborhood watching as her most prized status symbol was publicly and shamefully dragged away. They said it's past due, she screamed into the phone. They said the payment was stopped. Why did you stop the payment, Nia? You always pay it. Tell them it's a mistake. It's not a mistake, Mom, I said. Her sobbing stopped for a split second, choked off by my cold tone. What? What did you say? I said it is not a mistake. I repeated, enunciating every word. I stopped paying the bill last night, the Lexus financial payment, the $700 a month. I canceled it. She was silent for a beat, and then came a long, low moan of disbelief. No, you didn't. You couldn't. Nia, that's my car. No, Mom. It's your car. But it was my payment, I said. And since I am no longer family, I am no longer paying for it. But I have no car, she wailed, the reality finally hitting her. How will I get anywhere? What will I tell people? I guess that's a problem for you and Dad to figure out, I said. You should call Jordan. He's the pride of the family. He's the successful one. I'm sure he and his $20,000 gift can sort this out for you. I heard the man in the background say, Ma'am, I need you to step back. Nia, please, she begged. It was the last desperate plea of a defeated woman. Please don't do this to me. Goodbye, Mom, I said. and I disconnected the call. I blocked her number. Another chain, this one costing $700 a month, had just been broken. For 2 weeks, my life was my own. It was a strange, new, quiet territory. I went to work. I excelled. I led a major client presentation that earned me a standing ovation in the boardroom. I came home to my silent, beautiful penthouse. I read my books. I slept soundly in deep, uninterrupted sleep I hadn't realized I'd been missing for a decade. My phone was blissfully silent. No frantic calls for co-signatures, no demands, no drama. I was walking through the cavernous marble lobby of my office building on a Tuesday afternoon. The air was crisp and I was feeling the warm glow of a successful meeting with a partner. I was on my way to grab a celebratory lunch. "Ms. Robinson?" I turned. The head of security at the front desk, a kind man named Marcus, was motioning me over. He looked uncomfortable. "Marcus? What's going on?" "Ma'am, there are 2 people here to see you," he said, his voice low and professional. "They don't have an appointment. They say they're your parents." My blood ran cold, not with fear, with annoyance. I followed his gaze to the sitting area. There they were, Charles and Denise. But they were not the people I had left at the Thanksgiving table. The proud, angry patriarch and the nervous, status-obsessed wife were gone. The people huddled on the expensive leather sofa looked small. My father was wearing the same suit he'd worn to Thanksgiving, but now it was deeply wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot. My mother looked worse. She had no makeup on, her hair was unkempt, and she was clutching her purse in her lap so tightly her knuckles were white. They looked haggard. They looked broken. They looked, I realized with a jolt, like the homeless people they always pitied from the windows of their car. I walked over my heels, clicking loudly on the polished marble. They both shot to their feet when they saw me. "Nia," my mother breathed, her voice a reedy, desperate whisper. She took a step toward me as if to hug me, then stopped, remembering. "Nia, thank God. We need to talk to you." My father wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the floor, a crumpled official-looking envelope clutched in his hand. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 2 weeks. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice was not warm. It was the voice I used for hostile clients. "Nia, please," my mother begged, tears already welling up. It's the house," my father finally spoke. His voice, once a proud, booming roar, was now a gravelly, defeated rasp. "The bank," he mumbled, holding out the crumpled envelope like a white flag of surrender. "They sent this. I didn't take it." "Sent what?" "It's a notice." Denise jumped in, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "A foreclosure notice, Nia. It says we're past due on a loan. It says if we don't pay $20,700 in the next 10 days, they're going to take the house." She was openly sobbing now, right here in the lobby of my firm. "We don't understand Jordan. Jordan says it's all a mistake. He says the bank messed up the paperwork for the renovation. He's been on the phone with them for days, he says, but they won't listen to him. He says it's all a big bank error." I just stared at them. They were still clinging to his lie. Even now, faced with losing everything, their faith in him or their terror of the truth was absolute. My father finally looked up. His eyes met mine, and the man who had screamed, "You are not my daughter," was gone. In his place was a pathetic, terrified old man. "Nia," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please, we don't know what to do. We don't understand this paperwork. But you're the one. You're the one who's good with finances. You're an auditor." He took a step closer, holding the letter out to me again. "You can find the mistake. You can call them. You can fix this. Please, Nia. You have to fix this for us. Please." I looked at the crumpled letter. I looked at my father's desperate, pleading face. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just the cold, hard, final click of a ledger snapping into place. I finally took the envelope from his shaking hand. A bank error, I said, my voice flat. Is that what he told you? I looked at the crumpled letter in my hand, then up at their pathetic, hopeful faces. They were still hoping, still believing in the lie, still believing that I was the magical numbers person who could wave a wand and make the monster in their closet disappear. The monster they had fed and praised and protected while starving me. A bank error. I repeated, my voice flat and devoid of any emotion. That's what he told you. That's what you believe. Yes, my mother Denise cried, seizing on the word. An error. He said they mixed up the accounts. Jordan is trying so hard to fix it, but they're not listening to him. You can make them listen, Nia. You know their language. I almost smiled. It was a terrible, cold expression. Oh, I know their language, I said. And I know a bank error when I see one. I've built my entire career on finding them. I smoothed the letter out, glanced at the bank's name, the loan number, the outstanding balance. Then I folded it neatly and handed it back to my father. He looked confused, his hands still outstretched. I don't need that, I said. But the account number, he stammered. I already have it, I said. I have all of them. I pulled your credit reports 3 weeks ago, right after Thanksgiving. The blood drained from their faces. The desperate hope in their eyes flickered and died, replaced by a cold, dawning dread. They didn't understand what I meant, but they knew it was not the answer they had come for. Nia, why would you? My mother whispered. Because I am an auditor, I said, my voice sharp. And when I see a $20,000 check from a man who can't afford his own car, I don't see a gift. I see a red flag. I looked at them. The time for lies was over. The audit was complete. It was time to present the findings. You need to listen to me very carefully, I said. This is not a bank error, and it is not just $20,000. My father flinched. What do you mean? The $20,000 HELOC was just the start. That was the gift he gave you. But it was also the key. It was the test to see if you were paying attention. You weren't. So 2 weeks later, he went back for more. I took a breath. Jordan used your pristine credit and your paid-off house to apply for a loan, a very large one. He applied for a $300,000 SBA loan, a Small Business Administration loan. He used your names, your social security numbers, and your house as collateral. 300,000. My mother whispered the words, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked like she was going to be sick right there on the marble floor. He created a shell company. I continued, my voice relentless. A fake business, Jordan Robinson Enterprises. He submitted fraudulent profit and loss statements. He claimed it was a thriving business that needed capital to expand. But it's not a business. It's a bank account. An empty one now. He's already spent it. The Escalade he's driving. The vacation to Dubai he and Monique just posted on Instagram. That was your money. The equity from your house. No, my father said. It was a weak, pathetic sound. No, we would have to sign. We would know. We never signed for that. Oh, you signed, I said. You just didn't know what you were signing, or at least one of you did. I looked at my mother. Mom, do you remember signing a quitclaim deed? A what? She looked genuinely confused. A quitclaim deed, I explained. A document that transfers ownership of a property. Jordan told you it was just a formality for the renovation, didn't he? He said it was just to put him on the title, so he could manage the contractors. But what you actually signed, what you both signed, was a document that legally removed your names from the deed of your own house and made him the sole owner. We would never, my father insisted, shaking his head, his face ashen. We would never do that. You wouldn't, I agreed. Which is why he and Monique had to get creative. Dad, your signature is a forgery. A decent one, but I spotted it in a second. I turned to my mother. But you, Mom, your signature is perfect. Because you signed it. Except you didn't. Your daughter-in-law did. Monique, my mother whispered, horrified. Monique, I confirmed. She went to a notary public in a different county. She used a fake ID with her picture and your name. She signed your name, Mom, forging it on a federal document right in front of the notary. You can't know that, my father yelled, a last desperate burst of his old self. You are guessing, you are lying, you're trying to hurt us. I am not guessing, I said, the final piece. The notary's office has a legal requirement to keep a logbook, and they have a legal requirement to have a security camera. I am an auditor for a Big Four firm. A polite phone call from my office mentioning a potential interstate fraud investigation was all it took. They sent me the logbook entry, and they sent me the high-definition video file. I let that sink in, the final, crushing, undeniable truth. I have a 45-second video, Mom, I said quietly, of your daughter-in-law, Monique, smiling at a camera holding up a fake ID with your name on it and then forging your signature on the document that stole your house. My mother let out a sound. A low, wounded animal sound. She crumpled, collapsing onto the sofa, her body folding in on itself. My father just stood there, swaying his hand, gripping the sofa for support. This is not a bank error, I said, my voice like ice. This is bank fraud, this is wire fraud, this is aggravated identity theft, these are federal crimes. Jordan and Monique didn't just make a mistake. They committed a series of calculated felonies that carry a mandatory minimum sentence. They are looking at 10 years in a federal prison. Both of them. I looked at my watch. I have to get back to work. The immediate aftermath was pure chaos. My mother Denise was wailing a high-pitched animal sound of pure grief. She was rocking back and forth on the lobby sofa, repeating the words, 10 years and Monique, over and over. My father Charles was gone. The proud patriarch had been replaced by a hollow shell. He was just staring into the middle distance, his face gray, the foreclosure notice fluttering in his limp hand. He was a man who had just watched his entire world, his legacy, his pride and his home, detonate in the span of 5 minutes. He looked at me, his eyes empty. Prison, he whispered. Federal, prison. 10 years, minimum. I said, my voice cold. The commotion had attracted the attention of my firm's security. Marcus was walking over, his hand near his radio. I held up a hand. It's fine, Marcus, they're just leaving. That night there was a confrontation at the house. My parents, now armed with the truth, finally turned on their golden child. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later. It was a storm of screaming accusations and blame. The first casualty was Monique. I had my lawyer send her a single private link. It was the 45-second video file from the notary's office. The subject line of the email was simple. U.S. Federal Code 18 Section 128 Identity Theft. She cracked in less than an hour. She must have realized that Jordan, her provider, was a broke fraud who was about to drag her down with him. She wasn't just a co-conspirator. She was the one on camera. She was the one who had held up the fake ID. She was the one facing a decade in a cell, and she chose herself. She hired a lawyer. She filed for divorce citing fraud. And she gave a full sworn affidavit to my legal team detailing everything. How Jordan had planned it, how he had assured her it was no big deal, how he had spent every dime of the $300,000 on his Escalade on crypto gambles and on showing everyone how successful he was. She turned on him completely, becoming the star witness against her own husband in exchange for cooperation. The pride of the family was now radioactive. Jordan's collapse was total. He was no longer the king of Thanksgiving. He was a cornered, terrified, sobbing man. He lost his wife, his business, his car, and his reputation in the span of 72 hours. A week later I met him. Not at my office, not at their house, at a neutral coffee shop. He was a wreck. He was unshaven, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was trembling. "Nia, please," he whimpered as soon as I sat down. "You can't. The FBI, prison, I'll do anything." I just looked at him. The auditor, The boring sister. I'm not interested in your apologies, Jordan, I said, setting my briefcase on the table. I'm interested in the ledger. You have a debt of $300,000, plus interest, plus the $10,000 for the party. You will pay it back. I can't, he cried. I have nothing. She's taking everything. You're right, I said. You have no assets, but you have the ability to work. So here is my offer. I slid a pre-typed document across the table. I am an auditor. I am not a prosecutor. I am willing for now to keep this a family matter. I will not send the video of Monique to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Yet. He stared at me, hope flickering in his terrified eyes. On 3 conditions, I continued. 1. You confess. Not just to me. You will sit down with Mom and Dad, and you will tell them everything. Every lie, every dollar, every signature. They will hear it from your mouth. His face paled, but I went on. 2. You will get a job. A real job. I took the liberty of looking. The Amazon Fulfillment Center is hiring for the night shift. It pays $17 an hour. You start Monday. Amazon, he whispered, horrified. The CEO working in a warehouse. The humiliation was perfect. And 3, I said, tapping the paper. This is a wage garnishment agreement. You will sign it. Your entire paycheck, every single dollar, will be direct deposited into an escrow account I control. It will be used to pay back the loan, saving the house. I will give you a weekly allowance of $50 for food. That's it. You will do this until the entire $300,000 is repaid. It will take you approximately 17 years. 17 years, he choked. It's better than 10 in prison, I said. He looked at the document. He looked at me, the boring sister who held his entire life in her hands. He was completely, utterly broken. He picked up the pen, his hand shaking so violently he could barely hold it, and he signed. The audit was closed. You might think that after Jordan signed his confession and started his new life packing boxes on the night shift, I would simply call the bank and stop the foreclosure. You might think I would negotiate a new payment plan using my financial expertise to save their home. That is what they thought too. My parents spent the next 3 months in a state of suspended terror watching the notices pile up. Jordan's meager paychecks, now controlled entirely by me, were dutifully applied to the loan, but they were a drop in the ocean. It was nowhere near enough to stop the legal machine that was grinding forward. The bank did not care about our family drama. It only cared about the $300,000 default. My parents called me, but I didn't answer. I had their numbers unblocked, but I let them go to voicemail. The messages were frantic. Nia, the auction date is set. Nia, they put a sign on the lawn. Nia, please, you said you would handle it. I never said I would save it. I said I would handle it. On a rainy Tuesday morning in March, 3 months after Thanksgiving, I did not go to my office. I drove my car to the Fulton County Courthouse. I was not dressed for work. I was dressed as an investor, in a sharp dark pantsuit, my hair pulled back. I was carrying a leather briefcase. Inside, it was not a laptop. It was a single certified cashier's check for the full appraised value of the house. The auction was held on the courthouse steps, a sad public affair. There were a few other investors there, men in cheap suits, vulture-like, looking for a bargain. My parents were there. They were huddled together on a cold stone bench, looking lost and broken. They saw me and their faces lit up with a desperate, pathetic hope. They thought I was there to perform a last-minute miracle, to stop the auction. I did not look at them. I simply registered with the auctioneer. Lot number 1, the man yelled, his voice flat. 1245 Maple Drive. Opening bid $310,000. My father gasped. That was the loan amount. One of the investors raised his paddle. 311. 312, another one said. I waited. They went back and forth, adding 1,000 at a time. When they stalled at 315,000, I raised my paddle. 350,000, I said, my voice clear and strong. The entire auction stopped. The investors turned to look at me. My parents stared their mouths open in utter profound confusion. The auctioneer blinked. "350, ma'am, that's all right. 350,000 going once." He looked at the other investors. They all shook their heads disgusted and put their paddles down. This was no longer a bargain. "Going twice?" He looked at me. I nodded, my face impassive. "Sold," he said and slammed his gavel down. "To the lady in the front." I walked forward. I handed him the check. He handed me the certificate of title. It was clean. It was simple. It took less than 90 seconds. I turned and walked past my parents. My mother stood up. "Nia? What did you do?" I paused, looking at the two people huddled on the bench, now officially homeless. "I handled it," I said. "The bank has been paid in full. The foreclosure is complete." "But the house," my father whispered, not understanding. Who bought it?" I held up the small piece of paper. "The deed." "I did," I said. "It's my house now." I let them wait for 1 full week. I let them live in the cramped, musty, spare bedroom at my Aunt Clarice's house. I let them sleep on a 30-year-old mattress, eat off TV trays, and listen to her cats scratching at the door. I let them understand truly what it meant to be homeless, powerless, and living on someone else's terms. When I finally drove to the small bungalow, I didn't call first. I just arrived. I found them in the small living room. The air was thick with the smell of old furniture and regret. They were just sitting there staring at a blank television screen. They looked like ghosts, like pale imitations of the proud, loud people who had hosted Thanksgiving. When I walked in, they both flinched. My mother Denise stood up, wringing her hands. "Nia," she whispered, her voice reedy and thin. "Nia, please, we don't know what to do. We don't have anywhere to go." I held up a hand and she fell silent. I was not here for conversation. I was here for a transaction. I walked to the cluttered coffee table and placed 2 items on top of a stack of old magazines. The first was a single, freshly cut key on a simple new keyring. The second was a document. 1 page. My father Charles stared at the items. He looked at the key, then at the paper. His hands were visibly trembling. What is this?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. My mother rushed forward, her eyes wide with a desperate, pathetic hope. Is that the key? Are you letting us go back?" "Oh, Nia, thank you. Thank you, God, thank you." She was starting to sob, her hands reaching for the key. I didn't look at her. I looked at my father. "It's a lease agreement," I said, my voice clear and cold. My mother froze, her hand hovering over the key. My father slowly, painfully picked up the piece of paper. He read the title. "Tenant Agreement. You can move back into the house." I explained, my voice perfectly level. "You can live there. I will keep the utilities in my name. I will handle the property taxes. But you will be tenants." I pointed to a line on the paper. "The rent is $1 per month, payable on the 1st. My mother's sobs of relief were choked off. She was finally understanding. This was not a gift. This was a sentence. My father continued to stare at the paper. He saw his name listed under tenant. He saw my name listed under landlord. He looked up at me. His eyes were completely, utterly broken. The proud, booming patriarch who had screamed, "Get out of my house," was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out, empty shell of a man. He had lost his son to a warehouse. He had lost his house to his own pride. And now he had lost his power to me. He couldn't hold my gaze. His eyes, once so full of judgment and anger, dropped to the floor. He could not look at me. He was living on the pity of the failed daughter he had disowned. He was a guest in my world. "You'll need to sign it," I said quietly. "As my tenant." I held his gaze for a moment longer. "Welcome to my property, Dad." 6 months passed. My life transformed. The weight I had carried for 31 years was gone, and in its place I found an energy I never knew I possessed. At the firm, my work was sharper, more focused. The partners noticed. I was promoted to Director of Financial Audits, a position that came with a significant raise. My penthouse, once my silent sanctuary, now felt like a home. I was packing. A large suitcase was open on my bed. I was leaving for 2 weeks in Lisbon, Portugal. My first vacation. Not for work, not for family. Just for me. As I was zipping the suitcase, the intercom buzzed. It was the front desk. "Ms. Robinson, eh? Denise Robinson is here to see you." I paused. I hadn't spoken to her since I gave her the lease. "Send her up," I said. I opened my door. My mother stood there. She looked older, smaller. She was holding a foil pie pan. "Nia," she said, her voice quiet, uncertain. I know you're busy. I just wanted to bring you this." She held out the pie. "I baked it myself. It's your favorite, sweet potato pie." I looked at the pie, the bright orange filling the smell of nutmeg, the pie she had made for Jordan every single holiday of our lives. I looked back at her hopeful, anxious face. She was trying, but even after all this, she still had no idea who I was. "No, Mom," I said. My voice wasn't cruel, just factual. "That's not my favorite." She looked confused. "But I always make it." "That's Jordan's favorite," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "My favorite has always been apple." I watched her process this small, final truth. The realization that for 3 decades she had never even known her own daughter. "I have a flight to catch," I said. I didn't take the pie. I just smiled a small, sad final smile and gently closed the door. True independence isn't just about paying your own bills. It's about refusing to finance your own disrespect. Your value is not determined by your utility to others. The moment you stop paying for their comfort, you finally purchase your own peace.